All right, so we have section 4, properties of identity, inverses in 0, and I misspelled the word of. I'm surprised I didn't catch it. And this is going to be another short video. A lot of these properties, I honestly believe you already know, which is maybe you didn't even know they had a name, but they do. Okay, so we're going to go over the identity property first. And the only thing that we have to be careful of here is just, is it adding or subtract, or is it adding or multiplying? That's it. So the identity property of, let me write the word addition. And it's exactly what it sounds like. An identity is like you are an identity, you're yourself. There's nobody else in this world like you. Okay. So what you start with is what you get in terms of the identity. So the identity property of addition just says for any real number, let's call it the letter A plus 0 equals A, or 0 plus A equals A is the identity. In other words, just add 0 and you get the same exact number back. Okay? Now, this also applies. I don't know why my computer is acting weird like this. This also applies to multiplication. However, for multiplication, it's a little bit different. Okay? It still starts off the same way, which is for any real number A. It's just we got to be careful with multiplication, because if you think about it, if you multiply a number by 0, it equals 0. And we want the original number. So we multiply by 1. So A times 1 equals A, or 1 times A equals A, is called the multiplicative identity. Okay? So remember, I'll zoom out here a little bit. For addition, you're adding 0. For multiplication, you're multiplying by 1. Okay? Now, we do have inverse properties. And we have 2 inverse properties as well. The first one we're going to talk about is the additive inverse. So the additive inverse starts off the same way. So for any real number A, the additive inverse is going to be A plus negative A equals 0. In other words, the numbers are the exact same. They're just completely opposite signs. One is positive, one is negative. And the goal is to get to 0, okay? For the additive identity. Or, I'm sorry, the additive inverse. Now, the multiplicative identity is a little bit different. So the multiplicative inverse is a little bit different. It starts off the same way. For any real number A, comma, but A is not allowed to equal 0. Okay, so you can use any number you want except 0. And that's because for the multiplicative inverse, you're going to start off with a number, we'll call it A, and then you multiply it by 1 over A to give you 1, which we have seen that a lot when it comes to reducing fractions, okay? In fact, if you think about this, this is really just multiplying A over 1 times 1 over A, which gives us A over A. And we know any number that's the same in the numerator and denominator is equal to 1 as long as that number is not 0. And that's one of the reasons why A is not allowed to equal 0. But other than that, the multiplicative inverse is always going to be whatever number you have, just write it as a fraction with that number in the denominator. Okay? Now, the last property I want to go over is just multiplying by 0. Okay, so I think this is rhetorical in the sense that I feel as though you probably already know this. So for any real number, a, we know a times 0 equals 0, or 0 multiplied by a still equals 0. Okay? Now, there is one that we have to be careful of, and that is this one right here. Dividing by 0. Okay? So, for any real number, a divided by 0 is undefined. Okay? And there's a couple ways that I can explain this, all right? I think the easiest way is for us to think about fractions. So if you think about fractions, like let's say for example, 4 divided by 0. We already know this is going to be undefined, okay? Even if you pulled out a calculator and you hit 4 divided by 0, it will say cannot divide by 0. So we know that. But now let's think about, well, how does this actually work? Well, if you think about fractions, remember, you got a numerator and you got a denominator. And more importantly, when we were first introduced into fractions, we said that the numerator would be like the part or the parts, and the denominator is the whole. Well, according to what I have on the board right here, how can I have 4 parts of something if I never had anything to begin with? It's like eating pizza. How could you have 4 slices of pizza if there was never a pizza on the table? Like, it doesn't make sense. So that's why we call it undefined, okay? Now, on the flip side, if we reverse those numbers, like 0 divided by 4, well, that does equal 0, okay? And remember, if you think about this in terms of fractions, you have 0 parts. However, you had 4 of them that made up the whole to begin with. In other words, there were 0 slices of pizza left, but there were 4 slices to start with. So an easy way to remember this is a number divided by 0. Well, if you think about it, that spells the word no if you read it from top to bottom. So no, you cannot do that. We say it's undefined. However, if you have 0 divided by a number, that, if you read it from top to bottom, that spells the word on, which you are totally allowed to do that. It equals 0. Okay? So I hope this helped. Another short video. We got one more section, and then we can call it a day from there. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.